After 18 years of Football Manager, or 7 months real world time, today we're here for a fond farewell to Guernsey FC and Park to Prem FM23. Today we are doing a recap, and whilst it's rather difficult to condense the last however many years into a singular video, today we're going to try and do it. I have gone to June 2040, the day in which we resigned and Guernsey FC changed forever. But of course, we already know what happened in the future. If you haven't seen those videos, you should go watch them. And before we get into today's video, I do just want to say a heartfelt thank you. It's crazy to see the support on this year's YouTube series. It's been the most successful Park to Prem ever. We've been trending on YouTube Gaming. There's been tens of thousands of you tuning in on the daily, every weekday, and enjoying this little journey that we've been on. And just as a little reminder, whilst Park to Prem will be back next year, don't fret, there will be daily Football Manager videos during the week, hopefully starting as soon as next Monday. Yet, next adventure, you've not got long to wait for it. Anyway, today we are going to take a trip down memory lane, buckle up tight, get some popcorn, let's get straight into things. And to be honest, I feel like this screen here surmises 18 years rather well. Here is our adventure at Guernsey, starting in the Isthmian League South Central Division, getting moved across to the 7 League Division 1 South between seasons. We won that league. We then had a crazy season where I won Manager of the Month 6 times in a row and we were promoted. And while from there, we've slowly worked our way up the league, and we will be looking back at some old save games to relive that journey very shortly. Now, one of the unsung heroes of Park to Prem is a subscriber called Whitey. Whitey is the man who makes all the kits that you see in the top right corner. Of course, we ended with these kits, but on screen right now, you can see all the different kits he made over the course of the save game. You guys can let me know which was your favourite of all of these down below. I actually think my favourite might be the kind of cross away kit with the white and orangey red deal. I don't know why, the Champions League kit for when we first made European football, for me that one just hits different. But yes, Whitey, I assume you're watching. Thank you so much for doing the kits, mate. It adds a really nice little touch to the club. It adds to the story as we do climb up through the leagues. Here, by the way, is the overall best 11 in the year 2040. But rather than look at this right now, I think we should go back. I think we should hop in a time machine and go back 18 seasons to compare this screen here with how Guernsey looked when I first took over. Let's go have a look. And well, here is where it all began. 17th in the Isthmian League Southern Central Division. It was the 10th of December 2022, and we were joining mid-season with Guernsey planted firmly in the relegation zone. A turnaround that we would see, well, obviously secure a mid-table finish in this first season. It's kind of crazy to look at the club. 593 social media followers, bank balance £91,000. Things have changed a little bit since then. Our key player at this moment in time was Carlos Canher, a player who, if I remember correctly, didn't even get a work permit when his contract expired and ended up going back to Portugal. I feel like when you look at the team here, there's a few names that stick out. Matt Loring, a player who ambushed me on Radio Guernsey in real life when I appeared on the radio to discuss Guernsey FC and what we're doing here on YouTube. 31 years old. If I'm not mistaken, he actually holds the record still in the modern day save game that we have for most league appearances at the club. So, you know what, Matt? Fair play. He did play a lot for Guernsey over the years. And of course, the other man who was a massive part of this Guernsey adventure, Tyler Forbes. At this moment, as I joined the club, he was already here on loan from Weymouth. Of course, you might remember, we did go on to sign the British Virgin Islands international, who ultimately would retire 15 years later. Yeah, Tyler Forbes, very important player for us. As for my own manager, not sure where my face has gone. We won't question that, but we were on £300 a week, we had half a star reputation, and here were the manager attributes to start the adventure. I've not actually kind of tracked how they improved. I assume they did get better over time. I feel like it's such a granular, gradual process improving as a manager. You never really notice it in the moment. Of course, at the start of the save game as well, Scott Williams did exist. We hadn't yet signed this man, but he was a player who popped up on our radar rather quickly. And of course, he is retiring at the end of the 2040 season. He had an 18-year-long career that started here at Barrytown United in the Welsh Southern Division, where he was firmly in the Media Dream 11 at the age of 16. And of course, he would be the first, I want to say, mainstay of the team. I mean, he was contracted to us for 18 years. He was an incredible centre-back at the time. What a steal this guy was. And Yeah, one of a few players who stuck around for a very, very long time at Guernsey. After 2 years in the job, we would secure our first promotion. This one here from the Southern League Division 1 South. Looking at this league table, we ran away with the league. 12 points clear at the top. 80 goals, and of course the main man in this team getting those goals was Tyler Forbes. This man was the top goal scorer in our team. We signed him permanently during his loan spell. He then had an amazing season with 35 goal contributions in 31 games. More than a goal or an assist per game. Here was the team at the time as well. Scott Williams donning the Guernsey colours, although he would move on fairly shortly. Not to Cheltenham, mind you, and not for £1,800. Yeah, we eventually got a big bid for him. Elsewhere in this team, Kyle Farquhar was doing his thing. The 18-year-old striker signed from Wimborne Town, the team who did have the lowest away day score in the entire series. And Ellis Vaughan, of course, signed at the same time as Scott Williams, another Welsh youngster, the only 17-year-old ever to miss a football match because he was clubbing the night before a game. I think he holds the record for youngest appearance maker at Guernsey in 2040. Sadly, he didn't exactly go on to have the best of careers. At this point, though, it hadn't gone completely south just yet. Financially, at this point, we weren't exactly in the best position. Negative £112,000. That's a big number when you're a non-league club. But fret not, we did still play at Foots Lane. We still were playing in Guernsey. It's kind of easy to forget now how much we were moving around over the next few seasons, given the fact that Foots Lane, our beautiful little stadium here, just doesn't really fulfil any requirements needed in the Football League. 2027 was a very big season for us. It was our first time not getting promoted whilst in charge of the club. And in our maiden season in the National League, we bottled making the playoffs on the final day of the season. I'm still bitter about it, but looking at this Guernsey team here, social media following, it was on the up. We had Brandon Charles as our key player. He had been absolutely immense, if I'm not mistaken, this season. No, this was the season he was rubbish. He'd go on to be immense the next season. And in fact, the player who was immense this season was the baby-faced assassin, Noah Lebret Mabulu, NLBM. That's a lot easier to say, isn't it? This man, I mean, look at this goal-scoring record. He joined us on a free from Rennes, 31 goals, 34 goals, 32 goals. The only thing that ended up stopping this man was the fact that he couldn't get a work permit, and so I couldn't renew his contract. I think at this point in time as well, we'd gone from playing a flat 4-4-2 to playing this 4-2-3-1, and on occasion we did also go to this 4-2-4, which I think was the system that it did ultimately get us out of this division. A few legends of the club like Sean McDonald were here at the time. This guy was way too good for us as a goalkeeper at this level. He was putting in some pretty good performances as well for a lower league goalkeeper in Football Manager. Of course, we'd signed Gibua, who was a ridiculous pickup, who, despite this ridiculous value he has, we actually wouldn't end up getting any money for. He also left on a free. Of course, a couple seasons prior, Scott Williams had left the club for a record club fee of £235,000 to go and play for Blackpool, where he was then loaned back to various teams, but wouldn't come on loan to us, which did make me sad. And another big sale that we had made, and this is one that's easy to forget, Gianluca Rossi we'd sold for £215,000 the year before we picked him up on a free. At this point, we were relying on a lot of the continental players to come in and just try and flip them on for some money. And was it working? Kind of. I mean, the debts got bigger there, but we did have a few spikes of income where we were able to sell players, and ultimately that was the thing that eventually led to us getting out of the National League. Easy to forget, however, we were in this division for 2 further seasons. It wasn't like we went up second time of asking. Yeah, 2029, we eventually got it done. And of course, we did do it via the playoffs. Easy to forget that our promotion to the National League actually came via a playoff win where we finished... What place did we finish? 4th in the National South. So that was a really good achievement. We then struggled in the playoffs the previous 2 years. In fact, the season before we won the playoffs against Hartlepool that you can see here, if we just look at the league table, we'd been so good this season. We'd been incredible. And then we bottled the playoff final against Dagenham and Redbridge. That game does still make me upset. Brandon Charles was still at the club. He was still the key player and he was still a pretty incredible player, even if he only had one concentration. Like I mentioned, that first season he was slow. The next season, 43 goals to his name. He was absolutely sensational. And in our next season, whilst he did drop off a little bit, he did still get 28 goal contributions in 42 games, which is still a very good number. And of course, you might remember for this season, I had gone in with the mindset of, we're going to score more goals than you. It's a very sophisticated mindset. This was the system we were playing, this 4-3-3, and you can already see how I was preparing the team for the upcoming season. But you might have noticed here, NLBM, he was nowhere to be seen. And that's because we'd lost him on a free. He didn't get a work permit, he left, and there was a bit of a gap there to fill in the team, and, well, fortunately, we were able to fill it. But I do wonder if we would have won that playoff final had Noah been around. I feel like at this point in the save game, it was still rather humble beginnings. Whilst, yes, we were entering the Football League, the trophy cabinet wasn't exactly full. My manager profile, not exactly the most impressive, although we had improved quite a lot as a manager over this time. Our reputation was on the rise. We had a National A licence, but I was earning £50 less than I was, although seasons ago. Yeah, I think I took a pay cut at one point. I guess we were short on money. Were we short on money? Not at this point we weren't, but we had been. I mean, that's an angry low number. I think because we'd not won, but because we made the playoff final at Wembley the previous season and lost it, we got a load of money off that. And between that and I think selling some players as well, we did just about manage to balance the books. Oh yeah, Christopher Wu. He was playing for us. This was a weird one. I assume this guy got upgraded in January in Football Manager because I think he was playing at the World Cup in real life. And in our Football Manager save game, he was playing for me in the National League. Very important to remember as well, we did also win the FA Trophy against Yeovil Town. Take that, Yeovil. So 10 seasons into the save game, this was the state of play. Having reached the Football League a few seasons prior, we had back-to-back promotions and then a really solid first showing in the Championship. Our media prediction was 24th. We actually finished 12th, which was a comfortable little finish. The previous season's second in League 2. We then won the League 1 playoff final as well. That playoff final win was against Plymouth Argyle, but if I'm not mistaken, we were a deservedly promoted team this season. In fact, you can see how close the league was here. Had we not got promoted this season, I think I would have been rather bitter. I do feel like the gap between League 2 and League 1 is kind of small. I don't know if that's a controversial take. I feel like there's not that much of a step up, and so to get those back-to-back promotions was somewhat expected. What wasn't perhaps as expected was this finish in the Championship, where, like I already mentioned, solid mid-table finish. Tejera, one of the best performers in the league, with his 20 jumping reach, even if he did only get 2 goals to his name in this season. In terms of the system we were playing as well, we were playing this free at-the-back system. Of course, Scotty Williams, he was still at the club. He was still enjoying life, age 26. We'd brought him back to the team the season prior for £325,000. Elsewhere in this team, a couple of legends that would go on to be great players. Tejera, we've talked about. Kavan Williams, not this season, but the next season, I think he got like 20 goals and 20 assists in our kind of promotion season. This man was pretty much the reason we got to the Premier League, which is kind of mental when you look at it and realise he has 5 finishing, 9 composure. We'll do that justice. And he was just a physical merchant, really, wasn't he? But I do feel like physicals go quite far in Football Manager. You can see here as well, looking at the supporter profile on the right, favoured personnel, Robbie Yer, a player who we released, I remember, at the end of our League 1 season. He was a good player for us in the lower leagues, but never really made that step up once we reached the Football League. Brandon Charles was still at the club. Was he scoring goals? Not really to the same extent, although he did make 35 appearances for us in the Championship, which when you consider we snapped him up on a free, that's a good return. Shatayo's a man I didn't really talk about. He was kind of eclipsed by Tyler Forbes, I feel like. He had a few good seasons for us. I'm somewhat surprised he's in the kind of favoured personnel. He just had one good season in like the second season where he scored a load of goals. Beyond that, didn't really do anything. And of course, Tyler Forbes was still at the club at this point, was an emergency backup at this point. He hadn't played in 6 seasons. He would stay at the club until the age of 35. He didn't play a lot for us in that time. Good news though, 10 years into the save game, I did have a wage rise, £75 more, £325 a week. That's great, isn't it? Attribute-wise as well. I was actually starting to look like a good manager, and I don't know who this Brian Barry Murphy person is. Apparently, they hated me. Who are you, Brian? No idea why he hates me, but distant relationship. Should I be concerned? I think it's fine. 10 years into the save game as well, this is what the best 11 was looking like in terms of the club history screen. You can see here a couple of players we didn't really talk about. Players like Harry Kite, who did just sadly retire after he left our club aged 30. Pani was a really, really vital player for us, I feel like, in League 2 especially, and in League 1. Contributed a lot. He was a bit of a playmaking beast for us. He sat in that deeper defensive midfielder position and just pinged balls forward. At the back, we talked about McDonald. Gallagher was a good little player for us at left back. He did go on to become a staff member, but retired not long after without getting a job. McGuinness out on the right-hand side was a player we cashed in on massively for £250,000. And, well, there were a couple other players here that we cashed in on over the course of our time at the club. An emerging player at this moment in time was Abu Kamara. You might remember we snapped him up, had a really good season in League 1, was kind of the reason that we got promoted from that division, then went on to have a good little season in the Championship as well. Being in the Championship, for the first time ever really, we weren't having to worry about money so much. Bank balance £1.7 million. And over here on this transfer screen, you can see some of the fees we were paying for players. Kennedy Aboubakari, a player who came in as a bit of a big transfer really, on £325,000, but a good little signing in the end, and we did move on for some good money. In terms of money received, you can see here how we were just flipping players on for money throughout. At this point in the save game, really, this wheeling and dealing was what was allowing us to climb up through the leagues. In League 1, we'd let go of Barry Kelly. You might remember we snapped him up on a free from Arsenal, the Irish centre-attacking mid. He went on to have a pretty average career, really. I feel like we did well to get £900,000 for him. And elsewhere, Wayne Beckford. Remember Wayne Beckford? We got him for a free transfer. We sold him to Celtic, but loaned him back for the year. He was kind of shocking. I feel like he never really performed to the numbers of his profile, and I feel like he never then popped up again in the save game, so I can only assume this was him at his peak, which is a somewhat sobering thought. And just as a little reminder, at this point we were playing at Plainmoor. I already mentioned it, we moved around stadiums a lot, but at this point in time, we were playing at the home of Torquay United. Having secured this 12th place finish, wasn't really expecting what would come next with us winning the league, and well, I'm going to join you 2 years' time, first season in the Premier League, always a scary season. I can't even remember where we finished in it. Well, where were we in 2034? We'll go have a look. Okay, this Guernsey team here, it's starting to look a little more familiar, isn't it? 12th place we finished in that first Premier League season, which was a great little finish. Don't think we could have done much better than that, to be honest. We were playing, if we just look at the system, the three at the back system still. We had Setford in goal, Tejera at the back. Jaime had just joined us and was a really significant signing at the time, although for £4 million we did get an absolute bargain. Lemos was playing at centre attacking mid. At this point, I think we just signed him to appease a few other Uruguayans we'd be signing. But yeah, this guy went on to be a rather important player for us, didn't he, the 18-year-old? In our maiden Premier League season as well, Gaspar had been the big goal scorer. I say that. 14 goals wasn't exactly the most emphatic return, but for a £650,000 signing, hard to be upset about it. Of course, we were using this three at the back system to really build a solid defensive foundation, and whilst it's not exactly like our defence was impenetrable, I think this season, all the teams that went down were the teams that conceded the most goals. Indeed, they were. I mean, by comparison, we actually had a pretty good defensive performance. 54 goals conceded. 7 of those were against the eventual champions in Man City. With us being in the Premier League as well, finally I got my big payday, £25,000 per week. Things we love to see. Continental B licence secured. I was studying for my Continental A. Was not content, and financially, Premier League money's good, isn't it? £50 million sat in the bank. On the facilities as well here, you can kind of see how we'd steadily been upgrading things, but also how we'd been moving around stadiums. And at this point in time, we were playing at Sutton United's stadium. Yeah, eventually we were going to get our own stadium, but we were still not playing in Guernsey yet. And in fact, it was this summer that we would go on to move into the Guernsey Stadium, the club's home for the next 30 years. 3 years later, one of the saddest days in Guernsey history would occur. Tyler Forbes decided to call quits on his career. He was the all-time leading goal scorer for the British Virgin Islands, and yes, he hadn't played for us for about 10 years, but he'd been here since the beginning. He was the only player who'd been here when I joined the club, who was here, 14 years later, and whilst he didn't play a big role in the first team, I like to feel like he was an inspirational presence in the dressing room or something. We had moved into the Guernsey Stadium as well, 20,000 seats, kind of wish it had been a little bit bigger, 2 million social media followers, financially £131 million in the bank, and of course that was only going to get bigger from here because we had just secured a third-placed Premier League finish, a league season where some might call it a bottle. I know we finished close to the teams at the top and we did lose some games along the way, but ultimately, at this point in time, the media prediction was 12th, so to finish third was massive. The previous couple of seasons, we'd finished 6th place and got European football for the first time, then finished 9th, kind of disappointingly, kind of regressed a little for the first time in the whole save game, but from that game there, used it as a springboard, secured that third place finish, Champions League football awaited, and Gustavo Lemos was the key player, and safe to say he'd improved over the course of the last 3 seasons. We had, of course, as well, transitioned systems at this point in time. We'd gone from the 3-at-the-back system to playing the 4-2-3-1, which eventually would evolve to our final system that we ended up playing. Players like Alunga in the team, a very, very young Matty Cadman. He looks so baby-faced, even though it's the same picture. Signed for 16 million, had a good season. Not a great season. And Lannis, easy to forget how long he was actually at the club. He had come in, and for £9 million, he had put in a pretty good return. 17 goals in the Premier League. Total goals, 41 for the season. Highest average rating went to Rios. And you might remember, this was the JV season. The season where JV here put in a crazy performance, and then I decided to sell him to Arsenal for £70 million, which in hindsight was a very sensible move, mind you. And of course, this season was a significant moment because we won our first bit of European silverware in the Conference League final. And I know some people will tell me the Conference League final doesn't count. As far as I'm concerned, they all count. I was happy with this. We'd also won the Carabao Cup this season, and I do feel like this was the beginning of a dynasty. This was the season we used as a springboard, and of course, it's hard to predict what would happen next. A Premier League title win the following season, followed by disappointing slip-up the next, but 3 Champions League wins in a row off the back of this. So this was a team poised for success, and really, well, this was the beginning of the end, I suppose, this team here. It really didn't change that much between now and where we left things. And well, here we are, back in the future. First place Guernsey, playing at the Guernsey Stadium. That capacity had been expanded, and we left things at the end of this save game with us as the biggest club in the world. That's right, we had the biggest, highest reputation, 5-star reputation worldwide. Everyone knows about us. That feels good. Here is how the modern day best 11 was looking. Plenty of the players from the adventure along the way. Scott Williams playing at defensive midfielder. A little bit questionable. We won't question it too much. I know people ask me, Jack, who's your favourite player of the save game? The main man of the save game. And for me personally, it's this guy here. Now, I know he didn't get the goals of NLBM, Tyler Forbes, of Brandon Charles, Cadman, Alanis. Some of the players I'm sure you guys will recognise as legends of the save game. But ultimately, I think anyone who joined you in the first season plays, 19 games, then it goes on to play a further 28 games in the Premier League a decade later. I feel like they deserve a special mention. And I know he's not played a great deal over the last few years since, but ultimately, at 34 years old, he's retiring, having had a rather incredible career during his time at the club. Elsewhere in the overall best 11, NLBM and Tyler Forbes up top. You can see here the player with the most appearances in this Media Dream 11. Interesting to note, Gustavo Lemos, 291. That's a little bit surprising. Goal scorer wise, Alanis does have the most goals, but he's actually not got that many more than Lemos, than Forbes, than NLBM, than Cadman. Of course, the players that NLBM was scoring his goals against, slightly different to the teams that some of the more modern players were scoring goals against. This screen might be one of my favourite screens in Football Manager. I feel like it puts it all into context. The list of trophies all lined up alongside one another. The league history graph, which of course will be updated with one further little peek as we won the league at the end of the 2040 season. What a crazy save game this has been. I mean, it's absolutely mad. You can see, if we go on to overview here, some of the records that the club had. Matt Loring, like I already mentioned, most league appearances for the club. Not a bad little return for him. Brandon Charles, most goals in a season. Alanis, most goals in a game. Manny Wilford, most clean sheets in a season. And whilst we know, having gone in the future with the simulations, many of these records wouldn't stand the test of time. This is how they looked when we left things. I am fully aware of how much this save game means to some people. It might sound silly to people outside this little bubble we have on the internet, this idea that you can get invested in a virtual football team. But if you've been coming back each and every weekday for the last 7 months, this has been a massive part of your life. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Be that you someone like who, as I mentioned, has been watching on the regular. Maybe you're someone who's just stuck your head in through the door to see what's going on every so often with episodes. Genuinely, the support on the series this year has been absolutely mad. Like I said, it's not like Football Manager content stopping. There's more coming very, very soon. I hope you're excited for it. I hope you're ready for it. It is going to be something a little bit different, mind you. A little reminder as well, over on Patreon, now available for everyone, is a blog post that actually has a link to download a load of the different Park to Prem save games. So if you'd like to check that out, check out the link down in the description. You can pick up these save files yourself. Like I mentioned at the top of things, it's impossible to do a save game of this scale justice. There's going to be so many different individual things people want to look at. I did cover a lot of different things in the future videos when it comes to past competition winners. So today, really just wanted to make the focus all about Guernsey. But if there's stuff that you're desperate to find out more about, you can take a look yourself, and I encourage you to do so because there's definitely stuff here that I've missed. Here is how my manager history screen looked at the end of the save game. I love little things like this. 0 days spent on holiday, 6 days spent unemployed when we were looking for our first job. 36 awards, you can see here, we did end up spending more money than we made, which makes me feel a little bit sick because for years as we climbed up the leagues, that was definitely the opposite. I hope you guys have enjoyed this year's Park to Prem. A little reminder, I tend to alternate things, and this isn't always locked in, but with Park to Prem, we do a 1 club save, then we do a save where we move around clubs the next year to get to the top, then the year after we do a 1 club save. It helps to keep things fresh, I think, as much as anything. That does mean that for FM24, we probably will be moving around clubs. Not for certain, but it's more than likely. That does also mean FM25, you know, the big flashy upgrade here that they've talked about in a blog post. If you've not seen it, FM25 is like Football Manager 2, where they're bringing in a new engine, new UI, new all sorts. That year is going to be a 1 club save in the new game. And as much as I'm excited for next year, I'm very excited for FM25 and the Park to Prem that's going to come then. To end things though, I do just want to remind you, we do still have a fierce rival with Jersey Bulls. We've not played Jersey Bulls at any point in this save game, but apparently we still have a rivalry with them. And for some reason, they're playing in the Northern League. Let's not ask questions. They'd be silly to do so. Thank you so much for your support on this series. Thank you for sticking around to the very end of this video as well. If you have enjoyed it, leave a like. Let me know your favourite player of the save game. Is it Scott Williams? Is there someone else I'm not giving enough credit to? And until next time, don't fear, Football Manager content continues. I will see you very, very soon. Next time, somewhere new. Where though? You'll have to come back to find out. I'm not telling you here. I'll see you all later, folks. Take it easy.